In this tutorial, we'll learn how to use synchronous scenarios in Directual and chatbot.com to create chatbots. First, let's create a new app. Because we're making a bot for an online store, we need a marketplace template. You can use any plan for that. For this example, though, we'll use the Pro plan. Great. Let's have a look at the template. We see an empty marketplace with no goods. That's because we need to take care of the initial indexing first. So we start by going to the goods structure, other actions, and then refresh search indices. This is an obligatory step because the API has a filter on related objects. Okay, now let's look at the chatbot.com API. We'll use webhooks integration, which means that the chatbot service sends an object to the webhook. Then a synchronous Directual scenario processes that object and returns a response. Let's create a new chatbot and call it Directual Shopping Bot. Next, we create a chat widget, connect it to the bot, and copy the code so we can add the widget to the marketplace. Now, go to the Web Pages tab, choose Web Portal Settings, then the Custom Code tab. Paste the code here and save the changes. And if we look at the marketplace again, great! It now has the widget. It's time to configure the logic behind the chatbot. Go to the API tab and Webhooks, and create a new webhook. Copy that webhook's URL, then go back to the chatbot platform and select Webhook in the Integrations tab. Create a new webhook and select the bot. Then configure it by assigning a name and pasting the URL you just copied. You can use any string as the verification token. For this example, we'll use Directual_token. We add the integration and, as you can see, validation has failed. So we need to learn how to configure the validation properly. When we created the webhook, we automatically created a scenario to handle all incoming objects. Pay attention to the URL data field. It has two important values, challenge and token. To pass validation successfully, we must return the value challenge. To achieve that, we need to use the API response step. So it should look like this: URL data.challenge. We should also remove the new objects trigger because this scenario will run synchronously. Next, go to the webhook configuration and specify that the scenario is synchronous. After all that, let's check the validation again. Great, it's all working properly, and validation was successful. Now, just a few words about how synchronous calls work. If an API call is normal, it means an external system is sending a request to Directual, which immediately returns a response. If there's a synchronous scenario associated with a request, the request goes first, and then the logic in the scenario is executed. And only when the scenario is finished, either simply or by the API response step, does Directual return a specific response. Let's add a few steps to the bot scenario on the chatbot platform. The first step is a simple greeting. And the second step is a request for the webhook. That is, our integration with the app. Select the webhook that we just added and verified. Next, if it's successful, you'll see this message: Success! Okay, now go back to the synchronous scenario that handles all requests. Let's test the bot. The bot didn't ask us to do anything. It just went through the top branch of the scenario and sent back these messages: hello and success. Now let's look at the object that was created. This is what it looks like. The body of the object contains all information about the node and attributes. Note that the URL data contains the web token we configured when we connected the webhook. Now let's run a check on that token to make sure that only a specific chatbot can use our scenario, which is essentially authorization. First, we need to pull the token that we got from the incoming object into a new context variable and compare it to the reference verification token, which looks like this. If verification is successful, meaning that the token matches the code phrase, we let the object through. If verification isn't successful, the object doesn't go anywhere. You'll find the format for a regular text response in the chatbot.com documentation. It looks like this. We'll omit the attributes for now and send a simple text message. If it succeeds, we see success. In the event of failure, we get access denied. Publish the scenario and review it again, and we get the success response from the scenario in Directual. And now we see the object's path in the scenario. In the logs, we see that the validation process was successful. To all intents and purposes, that means authorization. Now let's configure the processing of different chatbot nodes, meaning that the webhook can be called on from different places in the chatbot tree. So each node must be processed separately. Let's give the first node a name: Webhook Node 1. Now we add branching. For example, the chatbot will ask what the user needs. It may be help, so it's a help desk ticket. Or to search the goods catalog. We'll have two nodes, one for the help desk and one for providing information about goods. This means we need to create two response options for the chatbot. One for help and another to search for specific goods in the catalog. To do that, we'll use keywords. And the first is help, which tells us that the user needs help or a help desk ticket. The second keyword is goods, which means that the user wants to check the goods catalog. For this, we need another webhook node. Let's call it Webhook Node 2. The name of the node is used within the webhook processing scenario for filtering. Let's test the bot by asking for help. We get the following message twice: success. Now let's configure the scenario to send a response when the user searches for a specific item. This will be a different node. First, let's look at incoming webhook objects, and there's the information about the node. Now we must use it in the scenario. We need to pull information from the JSON field, so we need to create a new string-type context variable called node. In the first step, called edit object, we add another action for writing the name value from the body field to the node's context variable. To do that, we call the JSON field again. Turn off Smart Inputs and add node name because the JSON is nested. Add a condition to the context variable's value and, as usual, don't forget to add comments to make the scenario easier to follow. If we're in node 1, then the response is help desk is here. And if we're in node 2, then we get the response goods catalog is here. Don't forget to configure the conditions. The value of the node's context variable is equal to webhook node 1 or webhook node 2, respectively. Publish the scenario and review it. If we need help, we get this message: help desk is here. If we need a specific item, we get the message goods catalog is here. Everything worked correctly. Both nodes were processed separately. Next, we need to figure out how to pass data between the chatbot and the scenario. And for that, we'll need attributes. Let's use the help desk branch as an example. First, we add a bot phrase that asks the user to describe his or her help desk request. And then a user input that stores the user's response in a special attribute. The attribute is essentially a variable within the dialog. Click the Save to Attribute button and add a new one. Let's call it Help Request. Save the step and review the bot. Go through the help desk branch and write a request. Something like this, for example: contact me, please. Go back to the scenario and look at the new object. There it is. In the logs, we see the message, contact me please. The attribute, help request, contact me please, all in the attributes section. Okay, to process that, we create a new request in the help desk structure. We need a new context variable. It will contain the ID of the new request and will look like a digit. In the Create New Object step, we set the ID by hand and store it in the context variable we just created, helpdesk ID. But first, we need to create a help desk structure. Set it up and fill in at least one of its fields. For example, the request text. Choose this structure, help desk, in which we'll create an object. Then, in the documentation, we can see how to generate a random number with, for example, 5 digits. And in the new object's message field, we store the text or value of the attribute. Here we can see that it's stored in the message field or the attribute field. The values are the same. We take the value from the message field, and in the response, we pass a new attribute. The ID that we created. Let's call it helpdesk. And we send it to the value of our helpdesk ID context variable. Let's also show it with this message. Your request has been submitted. The request ID is... and with the request number. Okay, let's save that and test it. we need a help desk request. Let's write our request text, for example, "How do I pay?" And we see a new ticket with ID 9516. According to the logs in the scenario, we can see that everything is working correctly. Now, let's look at the help desk structure. Here, we have a new object. Let's see if the attribute is returned in the response. We can see that it is. The help desk attribute is 9516. Great, so using the attributes, you can send data both ways. Now let's see how to get a more complex response from the bot, for example by showing product cards. We'll use the second branch of the dialog, where we work with the goods catalog. Let's add a request for details, what the user needs or is looking for, and the user types in an answer. In this case, because we have an online car store, the user can ask for a Mercedes or Ford. We also put that in the attribute. Create a new attribute, item name, and pass it on to the bot. Okay, we're looking for a specific item, a Mercedes. Now we're going to configure the scenario in Directual. Here's our last object, where in the message field, we see the search query. We'll use this query to search the goods database and return the relevant results to the user. We need a new context variable where we'll put this search query. Let's use the already familiar Edit Object step. And store the property value from the JSON field in the context variable. Disable smart inputs. You can use Ctrl-K for that. Next, add a search step, which will search the objects in the goods structure for anything that matches. We'll store the result in the array link. Update the scenario to include these fields. We store the search result in the goods field and search in the goods structure. As for the search condition, either the item's name is similar to the search string, we use the like operator here, and add an additional condition by combining it with the or operator, meaning we search by the item name, description, and by the related object's name. The related object is a merchant, in this case the manufacturer. It might also be similar to what the user is looking for. Okay, save those changes, and let's test it again. We won't test the scenario from the chatbot, but simply by copying the ID of a related object that already has a search query. Open the debug panel and send the object to the scenario. Good. We see how it went, and we have a search result. 2 objects, or 2 Mercedes cars. Next, we need to prepare a response from this array, so we'll refer to the chatbot.com documentation, where we find a response specification for cards. It contains an array of elements. Each element is a card with an image and buttons. Let's test it and place one card in the response. To do this, copy the image URL and change the name. Now check out how it looks. Start the chat from the beginning. We're looking for a specific item, a Mercedes. And there we have a card. It's the one we tested. Now we have to prepare a true response to be formed from the array link. There's a special way to work with array links here. It's this kind of enumeration of objects referenced by an array link. We'll add the Edit Object step. That's where we'll assemble the response, which we'll partially prepare using a context variable. That means we'll prepare this part of the response. Let's call it elements. It can be either a string or JSON. It's not important in this case. Go through the array link, add the iterator, hash goods, and then the name of the item inside that construction. Here we have an array. We go through all the elements of the array, and for each one we create a JSON object with a comma behind it. This JSON object's fields are filled from the fields of the objects to which our array refers. We don't have an image, but we do have an array of images. Let's do this quickly. There's our array of images. We add a new file type field, image or first image, and a little scenario that pulls the first element from the array of images. We use JavaScript because the image is an array. We use a split with a comma. Check out the lesson from the 101 course. It explains in detail how to work with arrays. Run this scenario for all objects. Okay, everything seems to be working. Let's look at our objects. Here we have the object and the first image. We use it to form the JSON. Leave one button. Look again at the chatbot.com documentation. We have buttons like URLs. We just want to provide a link to the specified product. In this case, we could use subpages, and that would be more correct. But we can also give the link directly to this card. Let's look at the address bar, and we can see that it has the ID of the element from the card that we just opened. Let's copy the part of the URL without the ID and add the object ID by using the templating tool. Let's use the debug panel again. Run the object and look at the context variable. All good, except we seem to have an extra comma at the end. We should add another step to remove the comma. We're working with the context variable, elements. Let's use it again. It's also possible that there's a space at the beginning or the end, so we use the trim function from the Lodash library. It removes spaces at the beginning and the end. And after that we use the slice function with 0 - 1. This construction will cut the last character from the string. Let's use the debug panel again. Oh dear, there's an error. In this case, the elements variable contains double quotes. We need to use single quotes in our expression. Check it again, and this time everything is correct. The comma at the end has gone. Now we prepare the final response. Here, in Elements, we insert our context variable value. It's this array of objects we've collected. Save it and publish. Now let's see what we have. We're looking for a particular object, say a Ford. Here we have 3 options. Check the link. Everything is correct. It opens the exact car I clicked on. Publish the scenario, and now we can check it directly on the site. I'm looking for a specific product. For example, maybe I'm interested in a Lotus. And there's the card with the only item matching my search. That's all for now. See you at the next lesson.